So in his own words, my boyfriend, the DT, what's this video about?
What's up, BookTube? DT here. I was starting to think Leia Cooper needs a challenge, and today we decided to go to the bookstore and have me pick out 3 books at random, well, based off my preference. And I briefly went over the summaries of the books to read them, and I handed it to her, and basically gave a brief explanation what I think the book's going to be about, and then have her read them and give her actual what's the book about to you guys. I'm going to be experiencing this with you, and we'll see how it goes.
Alrighty, so technically it's November 30th, and I was going to start this challenge on December 1st, but I'm currently reading a short story collection. I think I've mentioned it, my TBR, that's Dreams Underfoot by Charles DeLint, and I like to have another full-length novel that I'm reading while I read short story collections. Even more so since I'm budding reading this with some people. I think I'm a little bit ahead of where the group is, so I want to have something else to read in between reading the stories from this. So I'm starting the challenge tonight, and I discussed it with my boyfriend. Like, I double checked in with him, like, what order do you want me to read these books in? And he's like, read them in the order I picked out. So that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm starting with Season of the Witch by Natasha Mostert. Now we're rolling.
Okay. This book I got because it's pretty. It has a pretty cover and it reminds me of Link's books. So I figured, maybe there's a resemblance. Who knows? So, Season of the Witch by Nishka Muskert.
I think it's Natasha Mostert.
Natasha Mostert.
Yeah.
And it's about hackers and maybe a thief, and also there's a kidnapping probably, and it leads to a monk, meaning it's probably going to be somewhat religious a little bit in there, and it's like a investigation, so it's probably a mystery, and it's fantasy because it has witches.
Yeah, we got this out of the paranormal romance section at work. So, who knows? And we shall see how this goes. This came out of the paranormal romance section of the store. And, I mean, it's definitely paranormal. Oh, yeah, and it says, a taut, sexy thriller. That's the tagline from Entertainment Weekly. So, it should be spooky and supernaturally and sexy. We'll see how it goes. I'm probably just going to try to read one chapter and call that progress. I don't know. Sometimes it's really hard for me to start books. So I'll check in later. Okay. So it's like December 5th. It's been a couple of days, and as is what usually happens when I try to vlog something. I did a little bit of the activity one day, and then I didn't do a whole lot of it for the next couple of days, and I didn't really want to vlog that because who needs it when it's a month-long reading vlog? Who needs a check-in every day of me saying, well, I read like 5 pages, but I didn't read more? And sorry about the lighting. It's really harsh because I got overhead lights, but I'm filming this like in the 5 minutes I have before I have to go to work. It's also the red shirt. It's a really obnoxious color. Anyway, so I did make progress in the Season of the Witch. I'm like 136 pages into it, which is not great, but I'm going to try to read. My goal is to read 100 pages today and really chunk some of this out. This is not good. So this is a 2007-ish novel written by a woman, and oh my god, I really hate when I get booked. Like, this is terrible. This is terrible and probably unfair because not all men, etc. But I avoid unknown to me male authors a lot because I just don't want to put up bullshit that you find in a lot of their books. And that's because in the past, I've been burned. Like, we've all seen those men write sex scenes threads, right? And so I do read predominantly female authors and male authors who are just like recommended to me by people I trust, or who I'm familiar with, etc. Okay, so when I get a book by a female author I don't know anything about, and she writes like a raging misogynist. And it's not like she's writing that way to criticize those behaviors or to subvert them as character tropes. Because the thing about this character, this protagonist, because it's a male protagonist, is I think he's supposed to be charming. I think we're not only supposed to be rooting for him, but slightly attracted to him. But instead, but really, he's pretentious and insufferable and a bastard, a bit of a dick, and I mean, self-proclaimed narcissist, which again, I think we're supposed to find charming the way it's framed in the text. But then he also thinks that people who are upset by rape are just products of PC culture. So fuck this guy. Like, I read that and I was like, man, I told my boyfriend, I want to hurl this protagonist into the nearest sun, please. So that's not great. And it's just very disappointing that it's a female author writing it. And again, it would be different if she was trying to make some commentary, but like I said, the way it's framed in the text, I'm pretty sure we're supposed to find this guy charming and attractive. Gag. Because following that thought about the rape thing, he walks into like a gentleman's only club where they're drinking wine and sketching from a live nude artist, live nude female model, who happens to be one of the suspects. And of course she sits provocatively so they can all see her cunt. And then of course after the drawing session, she comes up to flirt with the protagonist and takes him home. I really thought they were gonna fuck. They didn't. So I mean, like, that's the only thing that surprised me so far. Anyways, the other thing is, this is like, the protagonist is supposed to be a hacker, and oh my god, the hacking in this is laughably bad. Like, you don't expect it to be great because, like, obviously the author's not a hacker or a computer person, and it's 2007, but it's real bad. Like, I've just been like copy pasting thing, because that's actually why my boyfriend picked this book, is he's a computer programmer, and so, you know, this was in the paranormal romance section. He's like, oh, and the character's a hacker, that sounds cool. It's real bad. So like that's the part of the book, like, he went for that, like, drew him in, and it's really not good. So anyways, I'm chugging through this. I will try to get another 100 pages in, and I'll try to do an update tonight. We shall see. All right, I'm home from work. Same day as the clip I just filmed, because I'm trying to stay up on top of this vlogging stuff. Work was work. I don't know. I just got moved into working in the kids section, so I was training on how to sort kids boxes today, which is a little bit stressful because the difference between kids chapter book series and middle grade books, I don't have it down solidly, and there's like some weird exceptions. Like, there are kids chapter books that are not part of a series, but like the author is so prolific and well known, they go into series and they just get organized by the author's name. So it's a little like arbitrary trying to learn all those rules, but it was fine. So I got off work and I was like, you know, I'm just gonna go to Starbucks. I got a coffee. I sat in the Starbucks because they renovated about a year ago again, and they put the comfortable chairs back in. Like, they took them out for a couple of years, you know, those cushy chairs with like footstools. They took those out and it was awful, but they put them back in. Now it's great again. So I drank coffee and I read. I got through about 32 pages of Season of the Witch. So now I'm at 172. Then I came home and I played a little Guild Wars 2 to kind of chill out after work, and I listened to my audiobook. I'm listening to Shades of Milk and Honey, which is not something my boyfriend picked or not part of this challenge, but I just thought I'd mention it. I want to say I listened to about an hour of this audiobook. I've got a little over 4 hours left, and it's fine. I'm not super hooked because, to be honest, it really just feels like Jane Austen fanfic at the moment. It's not Jane Austen characters, but it's really, really written in that style, and it's very light on conflict. So I'm not like super into it, but it's fine. And it's the first time I've read Mary Robin at Cal, so you know, that's good. I'm gonna go ahead and read a little bit more of Season of the Witch. I want to get through minimum another 30 to 35 pages. That way I can hit just over the 50% mark. Okay, it's been a couple days. It's December 7th. I've read a little bit more of this book. Like, I'm over the halfway mark. I've got about 150 pages left. I've already read like 20 pages today. Oh, it's like day one of 2 days off from work. So my goal is to hopefully finish reading this before I go back to work. I would like to do that because it's already taken me a couple days longer to read this than I would have preferred, since I do have other things that I want to get done. And I don't want to be like cramming them into the second half of this month. So I'm going to sit down here with a timer, probably do like a 30-minute reading sprint. I've got a cup of coffee. I've got some holiday fruitcake. I'm set. Okay, it's the next day. I was so good yesterday and I read about 100 pages of Season of the Witch. So today I only had to read about 75 pages. So I finished it. Hooray. It only took me 9 days to read this. I debated whether or not I should save like my final book thoughts for like the end of this video, but I think I should just go ahead and give them as I finish the books and then do an overall wrap up summation of the experience at the end. So I gave this book like 2 stars. It straight up lost half a star just for the epilogue. The epilogue was so bad. Okay, so let me give you a quick summary. This book is about a data thief who is not a hacker himself. He has a friend who's a hacker who he hires for jobs. He's just kind of like Dom Cobb. But he doesn't do any of the actual fucking work. Okay. And so he's a data thief. But he's also a remote viewer, so a psychic. And he is hired by this man who's married to one of his old ex-girlfriends to locate the man's missing son. And that gets him involved with these 2 women who were friends with the son, who he contacts through the psi space and does determine is dead. And he's trying to figure out which of the women killed the son. And he is the most fucking pretentious, egotistical. He's not the most egotistical, but he is extremely pretentious and super egotistical. And what drives me nuts is the way the author fucking writes him. I think he's supposed to be attractive and charming to a female reader, and that is so gross. At one point in the investigation, he goes to this gentleman's club where one of the 2 sisters poses nude for a bunch of drunk gentlemen artistes. Okay, and he walks into the club and he sees this quote on the wall. Quote, "Art isn't something you marry, it is something you rape." Credited to Edgar Degas. And this is what the character thinks upon seeing that quote. Not exactly politically correct, Gabriel thought, but then Degas lived in an age when sensibilities were less easily bruised. Shoot this motherfucker into the goddamn sun. So he spends most of the book becoming better friends with the 2 women. He hacks into one of their computers so that he can read. One of them keeps a digital diary, but he doesn't know which of them is writing it. And so he reads her diary and he falls in love with the writer of the diary, even though he still cannot tell which of the sisters is writing the diary. He just knows he's in love with one of them. Ooh, it's oh God, there's so many things. Like, I hate this guy. But okay, I talked about the epilogue. The epilogue, fucking alone, lost half a star. So at the end, he has a big confrontation. I'm not gonna give it away. It like doesn't matter. And the epilogue takes place like, say, 50 years in the future. And it's him as an old man sitting on a park bench next to a children's playground, reading his own goddamn book that has his face on the back cover, because the epilogue opens with some woman coming up to him and being like, "Oh my God, is that you?" and pointing at his book that he's reading. And then he gives her the book and she reads a part of his own book out loud to him. And it's so fucking pretentious. I wanted to gag. Horrible. I wanted to be conscious of not being too like mean in my reviews, because I don't, my boyfriend was so sweet doing this challenge with me, and I don't want to make him feel bad, because I know he's probably going to watch this. I don't want to make him feel bad for the books that he picks out, because at the end of the day, he didn't research these books. He didn't pick books that he had read. I went into the store where I work, which is a used bookstore, and he walked around to each of the genre fiction sections, and he spent a considerable amount of time trying to find things that he thought I would enjoy, that he thought sounded interesting. Like, he didn't just pull random books off the shelf, but he also he has never read any of these books. So he was going based on title, cover, and blurb for the most part. Were the title and cover engaging? Did the blurb sound interesting? With all of them, he did open them up and try to read passages, but it really goes to show that there's like sometimes with some books, there's very little you can know about a book just based off like the cover and the blurb. For instance, this book is supposed to be about a fucking hacker. This author knows as much about computer hacking as I do, but I'm not writing a book about it. And I know so little, and it's hilarious how little there is in this. Like, it's so bad. But so he's supposed to be a hacker, and it's literally the pull quote on here. A mesmerizing blend of alchemy and sexuality. Prepare to be seduced. There is fucking nothing sexy about this book. But anyways, I really appreciate the thought that my boyfriend put into picking all these books. And I feel like the book he was hoping I would get from this, because this was the book I was most excited for, and I think he's most excited about this book, which is the environmental science disaster book, I think. But anyways, this was the one I was most excited for, because it did sound like something that would be super my jam. But like, you can't tell. It was not good. 2 stars. Don't read it. Don't waste your time. The next thing I will be reading for the challenge is going to be The Last Continent. Second book.
My Last Continent, a novel by Midge Raymond.
Oops. We got this one out of general fiction.
Yeah. And this one, I think, is about the sea. There's no continents. Like, there's one, but they're trying to look for it, and they live on a boat. Pretty much, they encounter other boats. There's some problem with the water, apparently, because they can only shower every 2 weeks. I've read a little bit, so there might be a cause for water pollution with the boats, or the boat they're using. So there might be some mechanical engineering going on.
So why did you pick this one for me?
I picked it because, again, the cover kind of reminds me of your kind of style, and it is about a lost civilization or an end of the world continental disaster that led them to just living on boats. And I figured that might be an interesting thing to read about.
And it's actually a pretty new book. This is from 2016. I'm hopeful. Okay. Total honesty, it's been like at least 5 days since my last update. Yes, you'll see this sweater in like every single one of my blogs, because when it's cold, I live in this little sweater pullover thing. I'm still in my pajamas, just took a shower, so my hair is kind of horrible, but it's my day off. So part of the reason I haven't updated is I've been working, and I just don't update much on days where I'm working. Stir my hot coffee here, because man, I need coffee. So yeah, I've been working, and also I really wanted to have a day where I sat down and got sucked in to My Last Continent and like read 50 pages at a whack, so that I could be like, oh look, I made all this progress. But that just didn't happen. And over the last couple of days, I've been reading this. I'm on page 140, so I'm almost halfway done with this, but it's been like 4 days that I've been reading this, and I'm only that far. So you can do the math. I've only been reading like 10 to 30 pages a day, basically. I am going to try to sit down and get to page 200 today. I wanted to have this done but read by today. Obviously, that's not going to happen. I suspect this will probably take till Monday, especially if I decide to take a little time off and read more Charles de Lint, which I kind of feel like doing. Obviously, I do need to make progress in Dreams Underfoot, which I'm buddy reading. I'm a little bit ahead of where we're supposed to be in that book. But at the same time, okay, so this book is not a post-environmental disaster near future science fiction novel at all. This is contemporary women's fiction about a penguin researcher and her fairly boring love life. So it's not my cup of tea. So the plot is actually, it's literally just about like this 39-year-old penguin researcher and her, like, not on again, off again, but it's like very inconsistent long distance relationship with another penguin researcher who has like, who lost a child, got divorced, and decided to come to Antarctica to like turn his life over, like to completely redo his life. And that's when they met 5 years prior to like the near time, because there's like dual timelines in this. And that's when they met and they like fell in love, but like I don't really think he's all that in love with her. He's in love with Antarctica and she understands, and she's also in Antarctica a lot because she like repeatedly throughout the book she's trying to like get him to become more permanent with her, like to move in with her or whatever, and he's just not having it. He's like constantly doing his own thing, so it's like not a great relationship. And that's it. And there's a lot of penguin research in it. I love Antarctica books, but I like Antarctica books like Whiteout. That's one of my favorite graphic novels, but that's obviously like a murder mystery on Antarctica at McMurdo Station. If you've watched my channel for a while, you know I don't read contemporary. I just straight up don't read contemporary. I occasionally read literary fiction that's contemporary, but there's a big difference between like contemporary women's fiction and I have a copy of The Hours over there, so just pretend I'm holding up a copy of Michael Cunningham's The Hours. There's a big difference between those two books. So like literary fiction's obviously usually about big themes and the actual artistry of language. And I think literary fiction succeeds when it's doing something really interesting with language. So like I read Ali Smith. There's a big difference. There's actually nothing wrong with the writing in this. I think the author is completely competent. The writing's better than The Season of the Witch. It's just not my cup of tea. So I'm gonna go, I don't want to read. I don't want to read because this is gonna be like more of the same, like nothing. It's just nothing. Like there's no plot, really. There's no conflict. There's nothing interesting about it. What can I say? I am an SFF girl. I mean, if you take the SFF out of my books, I'm just gonna go play my fantasy video game, I think. So anyways, I'll check in when to be honest, I'll probably check in after I finish reading this because I don't think I'm going to have anything interesting to say as I'm reading it because just nothing interesting is happening. Okay, so it's a couple days later. I said I was going to read over the weekend, my 2 days off, Saturday, Sunday. I read My Last Continent on Sunday. And then, to be honest, I was really struggling with, I would finish a chapter and I was really struggling to find the motivation to start the next chapter. It's just not the most interesting. So I made the executive decision to take like a couple days off and to read a couple short stories from Dreams Underfoot. I did that. It was a really good decision because I did make some progress in this book. I'm down to like the last 100 pages in this. So like I read 30 to 35 pages of that this morning, and then I picked up, it's Tuesday, it's my day off again, and I picked this back up and immediately read like 35 pages of this, and I'm still reading it. I'm still going to try to chunk out another 120 I'm going to try to chunk out another like 20 or so pages of this tonight. I'm on page 218, and this is like 305 pages, so I have less than 100 pages of this. I'm definitely going to finish this by Thursday. So I think that means I'll finish this around the 18th of December, and that will leave me 13-ish days to read the last book for this challenge, which is more than enough. I also listened to like an hour plus of an audiobook today, so I've done a lot of reading. Gonna try to do a little bit more. And yeah, I think I'm going to end this here on a really strong note for like reading. Okay, I won't lie, it's been a couple of days. I'm literally going to have to look at my spreadsheet to see how many days. It's the 21st, and my last update was the 17th. The last time I checked in, I was still reading My Last Continent. I think I was at like 60%. I need coffee. Why did I even try to start without drinking coffee? As was the case during my last check-in, I'm starting I have a couple of days off from work. When I checked in, I said I was going to read for like 30 minutes and then finish this book over the next couple of days. Well, I actually sat down and just finished this book that same evening. And then several days went past. And since it's my day off, now I'm finally sitting down to read. So let's talk briefly about this book. One of the reasons that I was able to just read, 140 pages of this just like in one sitting, which is pretty unusual for me because I do tend to read in like more like 30-minute chunks of time scattered throughout the day, was that around the 65 to like 85% mark of this book, it actually started to get really good. And I do know why that I feel that way. I don't think I was ever feeling like this was a 4-star book, but I was feeling like, oh, it's like a solidly 3.5-star book. This is getting good. But then the ending was a huge disappointment. So it's like solidly just a 3.0 stars. It's better than Season of the Witch. Like, I would steer people away from this book. I don't think it's worth reading. I think if you're the right person, like if you're the target audience for this, you could enjoy it more than I did. So why did I like this portion of the book more than the rest of the book? One of the reasons, it stopped being about penguins. I don't know if this is going to give me hate and if I'm going to lose like subscribers over this, but I'm not really into penguins. I've seen March of the Penguins and I was bored. They're fine. I have nothing against them, but I'm not interested in them. And the protagonist is obsessed with penguins, and so is her love interest, and that's like the thing that binds them together. And I'm just not that interested in it. So I do love books set in Antarctica. I've talked about this before. Whiteout by Greg Rucka is like my favorite graphic novel. So there's a huge difference between murder mystery and penguin researcher personal drama. Most of the book is just her and her like limpid relationship with this guy and penguin research, and it's really not for me. It's really just a contemporary personal saga, but like saga is too exciting a word to use for this. Okay, so one of my coworkers was like, oh my god, it's Where'd You Go, Bernadette? And I was like, yeah, it is Where'd You Go, Bernadette, except not quirky or funny. We hit this point when like leading right up to the accident, and then the accident happening and all the rescuing having to happen, and so we stopped talking about penguins and it suddenly got really exciting. Like maybe I just like cheap thrills, I don't know. But yeah, so I really liked all the kind of tense anticipation before the accident, and then the accident happens, and all that kind of stuff is really good and really interesting and exciting. But then there was a couple of really terrible, I think, author choices. One of them being our protagonist she takes a little Zodiac across the ice because there's only so close her boat can get to the ship that's wrecked, because there's icebergs and floating ice and stuff like that. So they have to take little Zodiac, little speedboats, and they have to walk across the ice to try to get to that ship and all the passengers who are stranded on the ice and trying to evacuate from the boat. She gets all the way to the Australis, which is the cruise liner, and she's desperate to find her love interest. His name's Keller. So Deb is desperate to find Keller. And so she decides to climb on board the sinking listing Australis, which is being evacuated, to try to search for him. Because, of course, she's going to be able to find him on a ship that usually houses, 2,000 people. Okay. And obviously she, can't find him. And, it's just chaos. It is mostly abandoned at this point. People are just trying to, flee the ship. She doesn't find him. She ends up breaking a bone in her ankle because the ship's sinking, so it's tilting and shit's sliding and falling, and she's sliding and falling, so she breaks her ankle. She knocks herself out. She finally gets off the Australis and climbs onto a floating piece of ice and passes out. And then the next thing she does is she wakes up on her ship. Oh, guess what? She was rescued by a tourist from her boat who's this he's the epitome of the white guy who thinks he can just do stuff and be helpful, even though he has no fucking clue what he's doing. Like, Antarctica, not Australia. I mean, Australia's probably a dangerous place too, but Antarctica is a really dangerous place, and is very unlike I think the usual United States locales. And like, you need to have some knowledge about like where you can step that's safe, and how to move on the ice, and just how to navigate in dangerous weather conditions. And this guy, his name is Richard. Richard just sort of seems to think that he can just like blunder around and be useful. And it's like, you are so incompetent that you are more of a danger to the actual rescuers than you are helpful. And he's just the epitome of that guy. And then the author decides, well, he's going to blunder around and then just rescue not only Keller, but also Deb. Really? So Richard rescues them both. Okay. And I'm just kind of actually surprised, because I 100% thought Keller was going to die with like the setup. Because like, obviously, if she's going to be all mopey for 70% of the book, and we know he was on the sinking ship, obviously that means he's going to die. Oh, also she found out she was pregnant. And then I'm like, oh, okay, well that's an interesting choice. That's kind of cool. But you know what he does? She's in her cabin recuperating, talking to him, shocked to see that he's still alive. She tells him about the baby. They're going to get married. He's like, well, now I have to go help other people. So he's safe. And then he decides he has to go back to the Australis to try to help. And as her ship is like evacuating, they get a call that they're missing 2 people. Guess who they're missing? Fucking Richard and Keller, who decided to go back together to the Australis to try to rescue people. They find Richard's body. They never find Keller's body. So he does die. And I'm just like, I guess spoiler, but like, it's not a spoiler, because because the way this book is set up, you spend the entire book thinking he's going to die anyways. And oh, look, surprise, he dies. Hate it. That was my reading of this book. It's so cliche. I was not happy. Moving on. After I finished reading that, I picked up my last book, and I realized I took the dust jacket off, so let me grab the dust jacket.
Okay. No Time for Goodbye. A thriller by Linwood Barclay. Linwood Barclay. Okay. So, actually, I don't remember. Hang on.
This was from the mystery thriller section at work.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, you picked this book up, you read like a little bit of the flap, and you immediately said, this is the one. And I don't know why.
Oh, this is a mystery. Basically, it's kind of like Gone Girl, I thought. It might be like Gone Girl. As to the flap, it's some person woke up one day, their entire family was gone, there wasn't anybody in there, and they have to go find them. 20 years later, they're still looking for them. So it might have some resemblance to Gone Girl. That's why I picked this one. That's entirely why I picked this one.
I have never heard of this author. He's written about like a dozen or so thrillers, I think. I looked him up on Goodreads, and he is kind of still writing. This book came out in 2007. I think it's hilarious that my boyfriend picked up just a super, can I get this to focus? A super ratty, torn up copy of this book. Like this dust jacket right here. I don't know if you can see it. No, the white balance is way too high right now because I'm filming indoors. Anyways, the dust jacket's literally been taped back together in the back. It's like such a ratty copy. And he did notice. Like, I told him, I can't believe you picked up such a worn book. And he's like, it wasn't worn. It was like brand new. And I was like, no, it's not. Like, it's seriously beat up, like dog-eared on the bottom. I picked this up. It is about a woman who, when she was 14, she woke up one morning and her mother, father, and brother had disappeared, and she's never seen them or heard from them since. No note, no nothing. And now it's 25 years later. She goes on this show called Deadline, which I think is supposed to be like Dateline, where they do like reenactments of cold cases and like little reports. And she does the show hoping that like someone will come forward with some information. And then shit starts hitting the fan. It's been like 3 or 4 days since I started reading this, and I've read this much. I'm on page 210 out of a 338 page book, so almost two-thirds of the way through it. And it's pretty good. I do think it's like the most evenly palatable of all 3 books my boyfriend picked out. Some of the scenes are a little unnecessary. Some of the like dialogue choices, particularly there is a character, it's told from the husband's perspective. Like, his wife is the one who lost her family, and he's a teacher, and he's friends with his principal who knows his wife. And his principal has like known his wife for a really long time, knew her father a little bit, and has always tried to be like kind to her over the years. So there's a lot of conversations between where the husband goes to the principal character to like get advice, and it's kind of repetitive. That's my biggest gripe with like the writing and the scene choices in this. I do think those don't add anything. We'll see how it ends. We'll see what the twist is. That will really determine the rating. I'll probably check in next after I've finished this, because let's be real, I'm just not that consistent of a vlogger. Alright, it is December 25th. I'm actually kind of late filming this clip, but what's new with this vlog? The last time I updated you, I think I had like 140 pages of No Time for Goodbye left, and I was like, I'm gonna finish this within the next 2 days. And then I had that intention. Like, I think I said in that video, I'm gonna read like 50 pages and put this down for the night. I read my 50 pages, I put the book down, I was playing Guild Wars 2 and my computer crashed. So I was like, guess I'll do some more reading while I let that chill out before I restart it. And then I just kind of sped through the end, and I got to within like 25 pages of the end, and I kind of wanted to stop. But at the same time, when you're that close to the end of the book, do you ever just feel obligated about finishing the book? Because it seems silly to leave 25 pages to leave for reading the next day. This teeny tiny little cocktail is just like rum and cranberry sparkling cider. A lot of rum. So I gave this 3.5 stars. I can't give it more, and I can't round it up to 4 on Goodreads. Sometimes I will round up 3.5 star books on Goodreads. I can't do this with this one. It's not bad. I would say, like, of the 3 books, it was the most interesting. So just a reminder. Who needs a reminder? One of the things I will say about this book is it does what it says on the tin, which is admirable. It really is just about a woman whose family disappeared, and it's a family thriller with her from her husband's point of view, as 25 years after her family disappeared, shit starts hitting the fan all over again. And it was like, it was fine. It's not unpredictable. Like, it's very predictable. I think by the halfway point you can guess most of what happens if you're at all familiar with thriller genre, which this might be a shock because I don't read a whole lot of thrillers, but I'm really familiar with the mystery thriller genre from like a TV perspective. I have definitely put in the time to get the cred to be a like crime thriller TV buff. And I continued to watch them up until probably like 3 years ago. I won't lie, I tried watching Criminal Minds, and that burnt me out of the genre. It was so generically forgettable and repeatable. Down 2 seasons, 3 seasons of that show, and I was like, yeah, I'm done. And I haven't really touched one since. If you too are familiar with like the tropes and the twists, nothing in here is going to be surprising. Also, the way it's written, I feel like halfway through he kind of gives most of the pertinent information. It's just like a couple of minor details that he fills in at the end. But it's fine. Like, it's completely predictable, but it's fine. It's competently written. Not the best. Not the most interesting writing. I think I mentioned in a previous update, I really hated these conversations the character would have with the principal, where he would just repeat stuff that he had learned in the previous scenes to the principal, asking for advice. But nothing actually new is being revealed to the reader. So we're just getting the same information again, which is very repetitive. And there is a reason for that. There's an explanation for that. But that doesn't make that choice to write it that way any better. It really just goes, oh, that's why you did that. Well, it's still kind of not good. And I'm not going to say anything because it'd be a spoiler. Spoiler on a 2007 random thriller novel I've never heard anyone else mention. Yeah, those are my basic thoughts on No Time for Goodbye. It's like a completely average book. now I want to do a quick little recap of this whole reading challenge and how it went. So once again, I read The Season of the Witch by Natasha Mostert. I read My Last Continent by Midge Raymond. And I read No Time for Goodbye by Linwood Barclay. And I didn't pick any of these books. My boyfriend picked them. And he has never read any of them. He's never read any of the authors. I just took him to my work. I work in a used bookstore, and we organize stuff by genre, and then we just put it on the shelves. And so he just went to the paranormal romance, the general fiction, and the mystery thriller section, and picked out books from each of those sections, just kind of browsing titles, reading blurbs, glancing through a couple pages of the book. It was a really interesting challenge. I gave this book 2 stars. I might want to bump it down to like 1.5, but we'll say it's 2. I gave this 3. It almost became a 3.5, but then the ending ruined it, then bumped it back down to a 3. And then I gave this like 3.5. And again, it probably would have solidly been like an average 3.5, but there was this one twist at the end where it's just like, really? I would say this was the most interesting of the books to read. Like, from start to finish, there weren't any parts where I was like truly bored or wanting to put it down or wanting to DNF it, because it's just completely average. It's like watching an episode of like Criminal Minds, except it's not from the point of view of an investigator. And that's actually something I kind of put my finger on in this challenge, is that I like thrillers that are from the points of view of a investigator, a detective, a cop, a federal agent, even an investigative journalist. I like those more so than family dramas. So I did learn that. This book is not written for me. This book is actually like a reading group. This is a reading group guide edition from Simon & Schuster. So there's literally like how to make your reading group more interesting, questions for your reading group, discussion ideas for your reading group. And I feel like this is definitely for like a 30-40s women's fiction reading group, and that I'm not that target audience. It also, I mean, I already knew this about myself, but this really cemented it. I'm not interested in just contemporary women's fiction. And then the other book I read was, right, Season of the Witch. And okay, so these 2 were the hardest to read. This one I read about half, and I had to put it down for an entire week. Like, I just had to step away from it because every time I got to a new chapter, I just did not want to continue because it was just boring. And so I had to read like Dreams Underfoot in between, which worked out for my Dreams Underfoot reading. Oh, this was a struggle to read, somewhat because of the writing. This has objectively, I think, the best writing in it. Like, the writing is just solid and good on a sentence by sentence basis. It's just not, the topic's not interesting enough. This was the worst on like a sentence by sentence basis of the writing. Like, for a book from 2007, I am like 100% certain the author must have written this in the late 90s, maybe 2001. It's meant to be very like poppy and current, but it feels so dated. Hilariously, which would be fine if like the characters were likable or the plot was good or if it was well written. Like, if it being dated is fine, but the protagonist is insufferable ass who is like God's gift to women on 2 legs, apparently, like the way he's written and the way the author seems to view him. Like, that's the thing that also really bugs me, just like the way the author seems to view him. That also should not have been in paranormal romance. The tagline is a hot, sexy thriller, but it's not sexy. So there's basically no sex in it. So it's not a romance. Like, it's really not a romance. Despite, I mean, like, disregarding the fact that there's no happily ever after either. So it's definitely one of those books that, based on the cover and the blurb, it's hard to put it in the correct place. Because, like I said, this is sorted into paranormal romance. And, like, when I look at just the cover and just the blurb, read the pull quotes, which is what we base information on. Because, obviously, we as book sorters have not read every single one of the hundreds and thousands of these books that come to the store. My neighbor is just sitting on a motorcycle out there making a racket, playing music. Hopefully you can't hear that anymore. I've forgotten where I was at complaining about this book. I definitely would have, from all those cues, I would have thought that this did go in paranormal romance, but it doesn't. It's just a very bland, limp urban fantasy novel, really. So this challenge was interesting. Like, I had a lot of fun reading them. There are 3 things I never would have read on my own without DT picking them out. And even though none of them was a smash hit, none of them was a hit at all, really, except for, because like I really can't even call No Time for Goodbye because it was just like a generic episode of television. None of them was a real hit. I did not find an author I'm going to revisit. In fact, I found an author to actively avoid. And also I'd probably avoid Midge too, just because I suspect she's not going to be writing anything that I would be interested in. Though I could see myself recommending her to people, and I think that having read her, I could potentially recommend her to customers even, because I can see the appeal of her books and it's not poorly written. So yay, that was interesting. And yeah, I actually had a lot of fun, even though I was very, very critical of these books. It was a lot of fun. And I do want to do something like this again. Next time I suggested to DT, when I am actually living in a place where I can have all my books out on a shelf, I would really like him to shop my shelves basically for my TBR, and just obviously pick things that have gone through an initial curation process on my part, but who knows how long they've been on my shelf, who knows if I'm like in the mood to read them, maybe they're part of a series and then I have to like dive into the series I've been putting off or something like that. I think that would be a lot of fun, but that will probably be a video for the future, because there's no chance in hell of me being able to afford to move anytime soon. That's besides the point. But hopefully you enjoyed watching this. This is the first real like vlog I've tried to do in a while, and maybe it was completely boring because I only vlogged in like this one location because I live in a single room and I don't like carrying my camera around just because it's expensive, and I drive a Jeep Wrangler, and that is not a secure car. So I like literally cannot leave my camera in my car, and I can't take it into work because there's nowhere to put it. Just I don't have space for it. That's the thing. That's why I don't try to vlog more, because I don't have any interesting backgrounds. You just like see my nightstand that's piled up with actual just junk and like things that need to go in the mail. Life's hard when you're poor and you live in an expensive area. What can I say? But yeah, let me know how this was to watch. If you found it interesting, feel free to tell me to never do one of these again. You won't hurt my feelings. But if you did have fun, please let me know, because it's a different type of video for me and I would love feedback on it. So yeah, that was my boyfriend picks my TBR for the month of December. And I will say that I think that was a pretty good way to wrap up 2019.